Hey guys, welcome back to the Telecom Talk Show. My name is Tanay Singh Thakur, and today we've got Mr. Shekar Ayyar. He's the CEO at Arrcus. Arrcus is a hyperscale networking software company. Shekar, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Tanay. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
So, Shekhar, this is the perfect time to have this conversation with you, because India is having its 5G spectrum auctions as we speak, right? Today was the third day of the bidding. And telecom operators have, of course, bid for several frequency bands, but the focus has been on MM wave as well as the mid band spectrum. And this is what will help them to roll out 5G, right? So, uh, one of the biggest use cases of 5G has been cloud gaming in the trial phase. I've been lucky enough to actually experience it, how it is, and it's actually fun and it's new. So, like, this is my first question to you. Explain to us in simple words how different is 5G cloud gaming from what we have already been doing with 4G networks?
Sure. So, in order to maybe shed some light on that, let me kind of just separate out the world into a world of applications and the world of infrastructure. A lot of what we are talking about, like 5G gaming for the consumer, lives in this world of applications because that's what most of us interact with. But underneath that, think about the plumbing that is needed in order to make all this kind of more efficient, faster, better user experiences, etc. So there's a lot going on at that level. And so at that plumbing level, there are three things that are important that are going on simultaneously. One is 5G, and so with the auctions, the spectrum auctions, et cetera, this is now spectrum that will allow us to get like lower latency, faster response times, et cetera. The second is the move from cloud to multi-cloud. So there is, in fact, a number of applications like gaming that are going to be leveraging more than one single cloud. And then the third is the move to what is called edge computing. And so the idea behind edge computing is that you don't have to focus on just single points of very consolidated data centers. You can have this the power of computing in a lot of distributed points that are closer to the places where you have your phone or where you're playing the game from. So at that plumbing level, if you think about how all these things come together, 5G, multi-cloud networking, and edge, then this gives you an idea of how sophisticated that plumbing is becoming, and therefore how the application layer on top can now take advantage of all of this. So now to answer your question, I would say cloud gaming is an application that now is going to benefit first from 5G because 5G brings you lower latency computing, faster response times, but also concepts like network slicing. Then it's going to benefit from the move to multi-cloud networking because you are now going to have access to capacity pools for your infrastructure that come from many clouds, not just one, or many cloud providers, not just one. And then the third thing is the whole notion of having edge computing now allows you to go in and make these games kind of much more efficient because your point-to-point communication could, in many cases, be links that are very local or that are just limited to very short hops and therefore can be much faster in terms of game response times. So hopefully that gives you some color on like why is cloud gaming going to become so much better with 5G.
So, Shekhar, just focusing on what you just said, uh, I believe infrastructure is going to play a major role in enabling cloud gaming for the consumers across India because I believe without infrastructure, without edge networks, I don't think it's going to be possible, right?
Correct. So I would say there is definitely a simultaneous move that India needs to make and should make, where on the one hand, it is good to open up the spectrum auctions. It is good to have all of the telecom carriers essentially buy up the spectrum and plan on how they can go deploy. But honestly, that is only part of what needs to happen. If the rest of the infrastructure does not follow, then it's like spending money on an expensive car and then not having whatever gas or power to run it. Okay. And so this is where I think India needs to be aware of what changes they need to make on the infrastructure side.
So, Shekhar, how does Arrcus step in here and how does it enable the operators to offer this sort of services, cloud gaming and all?
Sure. So we are very much of an infrastructure networking player, and we do in software make sure that the operators can accommodate all the three trends that I talked about. So if you take them one by one, on the 5G side, as an example, for all the operators in their transport network from a 5G standpoint, Arrcus software can enable them to have the right kind of routing enablement. And what this means is when you want to bring your mobile telephony as well as your kind of fixed telephony and marry that with the IP network and what is happening in the giant World Wide Web, that's a place where Arrcus software enables that to happen. So using technologies like SRv6 or segment routing, for example, we are pioneering how operators can take programmability and use that on top of their mobile and 5G networks. And so that's sort of how we are playing in that 5G space. Then when you look at the cloud to multi-cloud networking transition, this is where Arrcus software enables these operators to automatically be connected and use capacity from multiple clouds. And so Arrcus's MCN or multi-cloud networking solution enables them to do that. And then finally, the way Arrcus software is built is it is edge native. So you can distribute out the Arrcus operating system into multiple points in the network and then orchestrate and manage them. And so this is how the edge computing infrastructure then gets enabled by our network operating system. So when we go and present our routing and switching solutions to all these operators, this is how they can then they can benefit from the infrastructure transformation that needs to accommodate what they're doing on the spectrum side.
Gotcha. So, Shekhar, are you already working with the Indian telecom operators or are in talks with them?
Not yet. We are not operating. I mean, most of our focus, just to maybe give you a bit of context on Arrcus. So we are a Silicon Valley funded startup with kind of a lot of storied investors on our profile. I mean, including folks like General Catalyst, Lightspeed, Clear Ventures, as well as investment from SoftBank, Samsung Next, Liberty Global. And a lot of our focus so far has been on the North American market, in Japan, Western Europe. We are, I would say, just kind of starting to look at markets beyond that and super excited about the potential for what we can do in India. But as I mentioned, we also have an engineering operation that is based in Bangalore that's pretty significant for us. So.
Gotcha. So, Shekhar, I believe once India has 5G, I believe it would be the better time for Arcus to step in and talk with the operators. But just talking about, again, coming back to cloud gaming and more such applications, which 5G would enable. One big thing that would be possible with 5G is network slicing, of course, which has not been possible with 4G. With network slicing, telecom operators can basically gear the network towards a particular need, right, for a certain set of consumers or enterprises.
Yep.
So how do you think it's really going to pan out for a country such as India with respect to cloud gaming and other applications?
Yeah, so India is an interesting place and market in that I don't think India is always on the leading edge of every technology transition, But I think every once in a while there is something there that allows India to leapfrog. Okay, and so as an example, I think the whole transition from landline telephony to mobile telephony is super interesting. The whole idea around payments and what is happening in the financial services industry is also super interesting, right? For a long time, India was cash, 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 and then it went to like complete mobile payments. Similarly, landline was so hard to get in a long time, and then suddenly everybody has a cell phone. And so I see that slicing can play a similar role for a country like India, where if you can provide the basic infrastructure, then over and top of that, having things that are quality or of service enabled channels or security enabled channels, or for that matter, specific channels that support things like gaming, become very interesting to create and deploy. And I believe that a geography like India can take the lead on something like that and not necessarily wait for like the rest of the world to perfect something like that first. And slicing is super interesting because it can take all of your bandwidth in 5G and basically separate it out into multiple channels that you can then offer. You can, I don't know, price it differently, and you can have different levels of quality of service. So if you and I want to pay a lot to play a game faster, then an operator could enable that using a slice. But that's why I'm excited about how such a technology could then get layered on top of what is happening in the 5G environment in India.
But Shekhar, do you think in the long run, is it something that is monetizable for the telcos, just focusing on the cloud gaming applications?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how they do it is a different question. So, for example, I think globally, the telecom operators have been very good at monetizing voice and data access, as well as on the enterprise side, connectivity, networking, VPN like services, et cetera, right? Um, they have not been great on providing marketplaces for consumer services or doing things that are broader than just networking solutions. So whether they choose to front end applications like gaming, or whether they choose to become more of a marketplace and provider behind the scenes that enable game providers to live on top of that and provide gaming services, that I don't know yet, because it's not so much a technical issue. It's really more of a sales and marketing issue. And having said that, I am 200% confident that technology that is 5G enabled by multi-cloud as well as edge computing will present an opportunity for programmable applications like cloud gaming to become much more prolific on top of this infrastructure. And operators should absolutely be front and center on how they take advantage of that, either as a provider of a platform or as a front end provider of gaming services.
Okay. So, Shekhar, what is next for a company such as Arcus right now?
So we have essentially got to a point where we are now starting to be pulled into networks, whether they are operator networks or they are cloud networks or enterprises, along the same lines as Cisco, Arista, Juniper, Ericsson, Nokia, Huawei. And so that is actually a great milestone for us, because these are all marquee customers that are now starting to build Arrcus into their network. A company like CoreSite, for example, a large cloud operator in the US, just recently announced that they have 6 centers in the US that are built on Arrcus technology that have gone live deploying our multi-cloud network. And so as we look at that journey, it is super exciting for us to see Arrcus become that fabric and the platform that allows telecom operators to deliver 5G transport networking, connect, like I said, their mobile network to their IP networks, et cetera. It's also super exciting for us to see cloud providers like CoreSite standardizing on Arrcus infrastructure for their multi-cloud networks. And then a number of enterprise customers are now starting to also use this as their data center, top of rack switching, their spines, their leaves. And so as we go in and expand, next for us is to look at new geographies where we can bring Arrcus the same benefits as we have done in the United States and some other countries. And so India would be very much on that list for us to see how we can support the operators in India.
Okay, so I guess it's safe to assume that US is the biggest market for you guys right now.
It is, particularly from the enterprise and cloud standpoint. From a telecom operator standpoint, we've been doing a lot of work with SoftBank.
Okay.
So SoftBank, Liberty Global. So between Japan and the UK, these are all, I would say, kind of market expansions that we have been working on already. So,
have you already tried to reaching out to Indian telecom operators?
not yet, not yet. So I would say that's kind of imminently on the cards for us to do.
Okay, so that will be all from my side, Shekar. Is there anything else that you would like to add here?
No, I think it's a fascinating time for us. I am particularly fascinated by this idea of India leapfrogging in the communications industry. And in particular, I would say, while we have talked a lot about gaming, I think there's an aspect of gaming which is more B2B oriented, not just the B2C side of it, which is how does, for example, an operator enable a gaming platform company so that they can then build and operate better games or even service like game developers. And so I think the B2B side of this is also something that needs to be developed better in India, because a lot of it in India that I see on the application tier is all very consumer focused. I think the business and enterprise side of the infrastructure needs a lot more attention. And once again, that's an area where we as Arrcus can help. And I look forward to actually having us be more prevalent in the Indian infrastructure landscape.
All right. So actually, are you waiting for the infrastructure to be developed, or are you, I mean, just talking about how you can add
It's not
value to the
actually. No, our
infrastructure?
infrastructure is ready to be deployed and
Okay.
operated in both operators as well as enterprise. I think for
Okay.
us, it's really more a matter of having go-to-market focus and making an entry into the Indian market.
Got it. Thank you, Shekar. It was a really interesting conversation. Thank you so much for your time. I hope we can do more such conversations in the near future as you enter the Indian market.
Looking forward, Tanay, and thank you very much for having me and have a great day.
You do, Shekar. Bye bye.